this episode, we take the next logical step after understanding business impact and move into the work of turning that understanding into a plan the organization can actually use when disruption interrupts normal operations. Building your business continuity plan, BCP, is about deciding in advance how the business will continue its most important functions when people, technology, facilities, vendors, or communications are no longer available in the usual way. For a brand new learner, this matters because resilience is not created by good intentions alone. It is created when the organization has already thought through what must keep going, what can slow down, who makes key decisions, and how essential work will continue under pressure. ABCP is not just a binder or a document stored somewhere for emergencies. In the Certified Information Security Manager, CISM, view, it is a practical management tool that helps the business protect its mission, reduce operational chaos, and preserve trust when a disruptive event forces leaders to move quickly with incomplete information. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A helpful starting point is understanding what ABCP is meant to do and what it is not meant to do. ABCP is a structured plan that explains how the organization will sustain or restore essential business activities during and after a disruptive event, especially when ordinary operating conditions are no longer available. The plan is not supposed to predict every possible emergency in exact detail, because real disruptions rarely follow a clean script. Instead, it provides a framework for continuity so the organization can continue critical work through alternate methods, temporary adjustments, prioritized recovery, and coordinated decision-making. Beginners sometimes confuse the BCP with a purely technical recovery plan, but the broader point is business continuation, not just system repair. The question is not only how to recover a server or application. The deeper question is how the organization continues serving customers, meeting obligations, communicating clearly, and protecting essential operations even while part of its environment is disrupted or unavailable. One of the most important ideas in building a BCP is that continuity planning begins with the business, not with the technology. Technology often supports the work, but the plan should first focus on the business activities that must continue or resume quickly if disruption occurs. That is why the business impact analysis, BIA, is so important. The BIA helps identify which functions matter most, how long the organization can tolerate interruption, what consequences appear over time, and what dependencies make those functions possible. A strong BCP uses that information as its foundation. Without it, the plan can become generic, politically driven, or overly focused on the systems people happen to notice most often. Building the BCP, therefore, means translating the BIA into practical continuity strategies. It means asking what the organization will actually do when a critical function is interrupted, how work can continue in degraded form if needed, and what arrangements are necessary to protect the functions whose loss would cause the greatest harm. That business-first mindset becomes even more important when you realize that not every disruption looks the same. A continuity plan has to be useful across different kinds of events, which may include cyber attacks, power failures, building problems, supply chain interruptions, vendor outages, severe weather, telecommunications failures, workforce shortages, or other disruptions that affect normal operations. The details of each event may differ, but the business still has to answer the same core questions. What is impacted? What must continue? What alternatives are available? Who is in charge? And how do we coordinate the response? A well-built BCP is therefore not just a scenario list. It is a flexible continuity framework that can support decision-making across many kinds of operational stress. This flexibility matters because the organization cannot afford to rebuild its thinking from scratch every time disruption takes a new form. Strong continuity planning prepares the business to adapt while still protecting the most important functions in a disciplined and prioritized way. A major part of building the plan is clearly defining scope. That means the organization needs to know which business units, services, processes, locations, and dependencies are covered by the BCP and how continuity expectations differ across them. Some parts of the organization may require detailed continuity arrangements because their interruption would quickly create serious financial, legal, customer, or operational consequences. Other areas may still be important but can tolerate a longer pause or operate with simpler interim measures. If scope is vague, the plan becomes much harder to use because nobody is fully sure which functions are protected by which continuity arrangements. Clear scope also helps prevent two common failures. One is trying to treat everything as equally critical, which usually creates an overgrown plan with weak priorities. The other is overlooking important operations because they sit between departments or depend on supporting functions that seemed less visible during planning. A mature BCP defines what is included, what assumptions apply, how criticality is understood, and how the organization will distinguish between functions that need immediate continuity action and those that can recover more gradually. Once scope is clear, the next step is assigning roles and responsibilities in a way that reflects how the organization actually makes decisions under stress. A continuity event is rarely managed by the security team alone, and the BCP becomes much more useful when it clearly identifies who leads continuity coordination, who owns critical business functions, who handles communications, who engages vendors, who makes executive decisions about priorities and trade-offs, and who supports operational workarounds when normal processes are disrupted. This matters because disruptions create uncertainty, and uncertainty expands quickly when authority is unclear. People need to know who can declare a continuity event, who can approve alternate operating methods, who can redirect resources, and who must be informed when business impact becomes more serious. Strong role design also reflects the reality that not everyone will be available at the exact moment needed. So the plan should consider backups, delegated authority, and how coordination continues if key individuals are absent. A continuity plan with unclear ownership often looks fine on paper and fails precisely when clear authority is needed most. Continuity strategies are really the heart of the BCP because this is where the organization decides how essential work will continue when ordinary methods are disrupted. A strategy might involve alternate work locations, manual procedures, remote operations, cross-trained staff, backup communications paths, adjusted service levels, substitute vendors, prepositioned supplies, or the temporary suspension of lower priority work so resources can be focused on what matters most. The right strategy depends on the nature of the business function, the severity of likely disruptions, and the organization's tolerance for cost, delay, and complexity. Beginners sometimes imagine continuity planning as a promise to keep everything running normally no matter what happens, but that is not realistic. A stronger and more practical view is that the BCP identifies acceptable degraded modes of operation and credible alternate ways to continue essential functions until normal conditions are restored. Good continuity planning therefore asks what the business must absolutely preserve, what can be simplified temporarily, and what arrangements make those outcomes realistic instead of merely aspirational. Dependencies deserve sustained attention when building the BCP because many continuity failures happen not because the main function was ignored, but because supporting elements were overlooked. A critical process may depend on a single vendor, a specific network path, a specialized approval, access to customer records, a physical site, a trained employee group, or a communication platform that nobody initially thought to list as essential. If those dependencies are not captured, the continuity strategy may sound stronger than it really is. That is why the BCP should connect each critical function to the systems, data, people, facilities, vendors, and upstream or downstream processes that support it. This dependency mapping is especially important when the organization relies on cloud services, managed providers, or tightly integrated internal teams. A function might seem recoverable until a disruption reveals that one hidden dependency was actually the real bottleneck. Building a strong BCP means making those relationships visible in advance so leaders can design practical alternatives, prioritize recovery support, and avoid the false confidence that comes from planning only at the surface level. Communication planning is another essential piece because continuity events are often made worse by confusion, rumor, delay, or inconsistent instructions. The BCP should explain how the organization communicates internally with employees, managers, leaders, and support teams, and how it communicates externally when customers, partners, vendors, regulators, or the public may be affected. The communication plan does not need to predict every message word for word, but it should define who communicates, what channels are available, how updates are approved, and how the organization maintains clarity when normal communications tools may themselves be disrupted. This is especially important because continuity events can affect not only operations but confidence. Employees want to know where to report, what work continues, and how decisions are being made. Customers and partners may need timely guidance about service impact or alternate arrangements. Strong communication planning turns messaging into a managed part of continuity instead of an improvised reaction. That helps preserve trust and reduces the chaos that often spreads faster than the original disruption when people are left to guess what is happening. The BCP should also align with related plans rather than existing as an isolated document with no operational connection to the rest of the organization. In many cases, a continuity event overlaps with security incident response, crisis management, emergency response, vendor escalation, and the disaster recovery plan, DRP. If those plans are disconnected, the organization may find different teams working in parallel with different assumptions about priorities, ownership, timing, and communications. A strong BCP makes clear how it fits into the broader resilience picture. It should describe when continuity activation is appropriate, how it interacts with incident handling, how technical recovery supports business priorities, and how executive governance ties these efforts together when disruption becomes serious. This integration matters because continuity is not simply a business-side activity that occurs after the technical teams finish their work. It is part of the same larger organizational response. When the BCP is aligned with related plans, the business can move with greater consistency and avoid the waste, confusion, and delay that come from fragmented planning. Documentation quality matters more than beginners often expect because a plan that is theoretically complete but difficult to use under stress is not a strong plan. The BCP should be written clearly enough that decision-makers and process owners can find what they need quickly, understand their roles, and act without digging through unnecessary detail. That means the document should identify critical functions, continuity strategies, responsibilities, communication paths, dependencies, escalation criteria, and any supporting references in a structure that supports practical use during disruption. It should avoid vague language that sounds formal but leaves too much room for interpretation when time is limited. It should also reflect the organization's real operating model instead of copying a generic template that sounds mature but does not match actual workflows, staffing, or decision paths. A good continuity plan is not judged by how polished it looks during approval. It is judged by whether people can use it when normal operations are already failing and the pressure to make sound decisions is rising quickly. Testing and exercising the plan are crucial because no organization should assume its continuity arrangements will work just because they were documented thoughtfully. A plan has to be practiced, discussed, challenged, and refined before a real disruption exposes its weaknesses under pressure. Tabletop exercises are especially useful because they let leaders, process owners, and support teams walk through realistic scenarios and discover where decisions become unclear, where dependencies were underestimated, or where communication and authority break down. Some continuity capabilities may also require more direct validation, such as remote work readiness, alternate communication methods, or the ability to perform key processes in a manual or reduced service mode. The point of testing is not to prove that the organization is perfect. The point is to learn where the plan is strong, where it is fragile, and what improvements are needed before a real event raises the cost of those weaknesses. A BCP becomes operationally trustworthy only when the organization has seen how it performs in realistic conditions and used those lessons to make the plan better. Maintenance is just as important as initial construction because continuity plans grow stale when the business changes and the document does not keep up. New applications, new vendors, reorganized teams, new service lines, remote work expansion, facility changes, acquisitions, and staff turnover can all weaken a continuity plan if its assumptions are no longer accurate. That is why building the BCP should include thinking about ownership, review cycles, update triggers, and how lessons from exercises, incidents, and business changes will be folded back into the plan. This is not mere housekeeping. It is part of preserving resilience over time. A current plan reflects today's organization, not last year's architecture or last quarter's reporting lines. A business that treats the BCP as a one-time project may feel prepared while quietly drifting into vulnerability because its people, dependencies, and recovery assumptions have changed. Strong continuity planning includes a process for keeping the plan alive, current, and aligned with the realities of the enterprise it is supposed to protect. It is also important to understand that building a BCP is not just about minimizing loss. It is also about helping the organization make better decisions when values and priorities come under pressure. During disruption, leaders may have to choose between speed and accuracy, customer service and internal control, revenue protection and workforce strain, or short-term workaround and longer-term sustainability. The continuity plan cannot remove every difficult trade-off, but it can make those trade-offs more manageable by establishing priorities ahead of time. It helps the business decide what must be preserved first, what can temporarily operate at reduced capacity, and where the organization is willing to accept inconvenience rather than risk a larger failure. In that sense, the BCP supports leadership judgment as much as operational execution. It gives structure to difficult choices and keeps the organization grounded in its critical functions, known dependencies, and accepted continuity strategies instead of forcing every major decision to be invented during crisis conditions. Common mistakes are worth recognizing because they explain why many continuity plans fail to provide the confidence organizations expected. One mistake is building the plan around documents and templates rather than around business reality. Another is focusing almost entirely on information technology and failing to address people, facilities, communications, vendors, and manual workarounds. Some organizations create a plan with vague ownership, so nobody is sure who leads when disruption actually occurs. Others define continuity strategies that sound reassuring but have never been exercised or validated in realistic conditions. Plans also weaken when everything is labeled critical because real prioritization disappears and the organization loses the ability to focus. A strong BCP avoids these failures by staying grounded in the BIA, asking hard questions about dependencies and tolerances, and treating continuity as an operational capability rather than a compliance artifact. The best plans are practical, prioritized, and realistic about what the business can truly sustain when normal conditions are no longer available. As we close, the most important lesson is that building your business continuity plan is really about deciding in advance how the business will remain functional when disruption makes ordinary operations impossible or unreliable. A strong BCP turns the results of impact analysis into concrete continuity strategies, clear roles, realistic communications, mapped dependencies, aligned recovery priorities, and a document people can actually use when pressure is high and choices must be made quickly. It helps the organization preserve essential work, protect trust, and respond with more discipline than improvisation alone could provide. For a new CISM learner, this topic matters because security management is not only about preventing incidents. It is also about preparing the business to continue operating when prevention fails and disruption begins to spread across people, technology, and process. When ABCP is built thoughtfully, tested honestly, and maintained over time, it becomes one of the clearest ways an organization turns resilience from a general goal into a real operating capability.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.